Hey there, welcome to Spectrum Pulse, where we talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and let's continue with our year-end list with the top 10 best hit songs of 2024. I've said for a number of years now that this is always my favorite list to put together, probably the easiest. I'm talking about my favorite hit songs, of which I can guess the majority of you have heard, even using my expanded list from Talk of the Charts. And while it's fun to put folks on game from something that's more obscure, stay tuned for the next list, sometimes acknowledging that popular music can indeed be awesome feels populist in a way I really like, especially in a year where it feels like pop music mattered so much more. Now granted, that belief is very much constructed. Culture and the writers around it are stuck in a feedback loop, constantly trying to be ahead of and then dictate to the other. And history is always the best judge of what really stands the test of time. And as someone who largely straddles the line between the mainstream and the underground, who isn't trying to be contrarian, please believe me, but sometimes winds up there by sheer coincidence, whether my opinions on art age good or bad, at least for me, becomes a factor of my own subjective historical canon. I'm not so arrogant to think that I'm shaping any larger narrative, but I'm also self-aware enough to know exactly where I might move the needle. And thus, while I said on my last list that I don't really think 2024 is as amazing as some will make it out to be, the true cream of the crop this year is pretty damn special. And I know that because a bunch of those songs wound up making previous years of my favorite songs, not just the hits. They just became hits this year. Now that might make this list more predictable than most if you know my back catalog, but if all I'm bringing to the table is the element of surprise, I would not be doing my job in full. So, alright, let's get this started with some honorable mentions.
This ain't Texas, ain't no hold'em, so lay your cards down, 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 down. So park your Lexus and throw your keys up, stick around, round, 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 round. Stick around.
It's weird to say that Beyonce should have had a much bigger year than she did. At her current level of fame, she's not even bothering to play the game anymore. And while Cowboy Carter was plenty successful and it should win a bunch of Grammys, I was left with the lingering feeling that multiple songs from that album deserved a lot more runway. Yaya should have played all summer, and Two Most Wanted with Miley Cyrus, I mean, with the proper push, it could have been a full-on radio smash with solid promotion or a music video. Come on! So we're stuck with her single number one from this album, but come on. Even if the song feels more like stomp clap folk music than pure Nashville country, somewhere between Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros and the Franklin Kids Show theme written by Bruce Cockburn, a very Canadian reference if you know you know, it's legit great all the same. Between Rhiannon Giddens on banjo and viola and Raphael Sadiq on percussion and piano, alongside Beyonce with a warmer, organic swagger for this sort of dive bar sing-along, there's an approachability to this song that we rarely get from Beyonce pretty much ever, but it's by far her most likable side for me. There's still some of that flashier glamour, especially on the outro, because most of us don't have a Lexus in which we toss the keys up, all of which tends to remind me of that intentional distance that Beyonce built from country with this project, which is why the song's not higher, but her charisma is high enough that when she is having so much fun, I can as well. Great song.
Take my whiskey.
So when I put David Kushner's Daylight on my top 10 worst hit songs list of 2023, and then basically pleaded the mainstream public to bring back Hozier proper, I didn't think that not only would they listen, they'd bring him back stronger than ever. If Hozier getting his first number one hit was on your bingo card for 2024, you're lying right now. Granted, this is where I have to step in as a longtime Hozier fan and say, well, yeah, it's great in order to see this here, but he has certainly done better. better, even if I will say it's a step in the right direction for him with the bluesy swagger in the groove and more in his brawny mid-range. I also appreciate the lyrics contrasting the person who actually has their life together, who's probably a bit too prim and proper, opposite Hozier, who likes black coffee, his whiskey neat, and doesn't sleep much, living one's life raw rather than the healthier but siloed and restrictive alternative. And yet there's no judgment here passed between them, and I totally get why so many women are drawn to the moody guy who's got that slightest hint of danger but gently pushing her away from said danger. Hell, especially as he's still drawn to her, as the second verse is comparing this woman's mount to Heaven's Gate while the rest of her is like the TSA. We're on a song called Too Sweet, a cavity search really picks up so many new meanings. But okay, let's not get this demonetized too quickly. This is precisely the triumphant return 2024 needed. Great song.
Jet plane on a clear blue sky, sun came shining down on all of your lies. I got too much pride to let that happen again. So this is where it ends.
Whereas it's very rare to see a song title that so aptly describes where I'm about done with the artist in question. Where It Ends first came out in the summer of 2022, and I really liked it then, even as it and Bailey Zimmerman as a whole have struggled to find their place on the Hot 100 or in Nashville, mostly because for a Morgan Wallen ripoff, the genuine article can now album bomb the charts and leave the wannabes scrambling. But I still have a fondness for a truly furious breakup song, and Zimmerman nailed this one, where both partners are just done with each other, especially after multiple chances were given. The love is spent, and all that's left is red flags and bile. Which is why I didn't mind that this was basically a post-grunge song from the 2000s, especially in the production and guitar work. And I also like that the song is mature enough not to take the cheap misogynistic shots it probably could, but also not compromise on the emotion, a balancing act that a lot of men in country can't handle. And I include Bailey Zimmerman in that because ever since this song, he's kind of been flailing for any ideas or production quality that would help him stand out or get over the top again. At least this circled around to stick the landing. I guess I'll take it, even if this is where it actually ends.
I know you want my touch for life. If you love me right, then who knows? I might let you make me Juno. You know I just...
Yes, I know. For the online music critic least charmed by Sabrina Carpenter's half-ironic, silly sex kitten shtick, because I heard the album and I can recognize how dating down is making her miserable, there were a few songs from Short and Sweet that wound up working, and it was none of her biggest hits. Espresso, fine. Taste, fine. Please, 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 y'all are very lucky it's not making the worst list. It was one of the last songs I cut from it, but Juno was the one that really worked for me, even despite how amazingly stupid it is. Yeah, the song is some kitschy throwback pop rock that made me smile, with probably her warmest production to date and her strongest groove, but when you combine it with her girlish exuberance, it becomes a sort of sex song that feels more lived in, a little bit more real, where you can actually have some fun in bed, and it's a little bit silly for it. There is a place for the dark, intense sex songs, or those smoky bedroom ballads, but I gotta be honest, I kinda wish there was a little bit more like this too. It has the vibe of an R-rated mid-budget romantic comedy with an undercurrent of sweetness that got released to theaters and is frankly way better than it has any right to be, which mostly describes the titular movie in question. Okay kids, ask your parents about when rom-coms were more than just Netflix originals. Granted, the horny and kinky energy of this song balanced with a light touch is a huge part of its charm. If you haven't heard some of the wild places this goes, I don't want to spoil this album cut. I mean, there's quite frankly so much delirious flair that with this song alone, I kinda get that Gen Z kid who said he was afraid of Sabrina Carpenter on Twitter. Trust me when I say that's a fear worth getting over, cause this is a lot of fun.
What fits the reckless and what fits the jack? I push like a daisy through old sidewalk cracks. Yeah, my kinda crazy, still running its courses with wildflowers and wild horses.
The deep cut sleeper hit that has me constantly wondering why Lainey Wilson doesn't double down on smoky western anthems with galloping grooves rather than the stodgy funk-infused clunkers that don't flatter her skill set. I put this song in the same canon as Chris Stapleton's White Horse from last year, which was probably a bigger hit this year. A song that feels immense and takes full advantage of her huge voice that can play for something a little bit more untamed and wild. It reminds me of the rare moments when Reba McEntire was really allowed to cut loose in the 80s and 90s, show a little bit more fire and brimstone, and really the only thing holding this back from being a little higher on this list is that the writing is more descriptive of how Lainey Wilson is that wild child, rather than actually doing more with it or telling a story. But still, if you want evidence that Jay Joyce can be a credible country producer when he gets out of his own goddamn way of his own worst instincts, here's a banger for you. Kick-Ass.
How lucky are we? It's been a hell of a week, but you're all grown now. The smoke seeping out of your bloody teeth, but you're home somehow.
So I said this on Billboard Breakdown. In the aftermath of Zach Bryan's messy breakup and public fallout and weird talk of retiring from touring, to say nothing of his ongoing erratic behavior and Barstool trying to egg on the ruination of his life, I would understand if many folks were about done with him. As someone who's been listening to the dude since 2020 and who wasn't really surprised by any of his shitty, borderline abusive behavior, or actually just might be outright abusive, when someone tells you who they are on album after album, especially in the negative, I'm gonna believe him. What I found more compelling about all of this was watching the unstable train wreck unfold. And that leaves 28 in a place that feels only rougher in hindsight. An exhausted exhale where he's trying to cling to the relationship that already seems to be on the rocks, where his own mental health feels ravaged thanks to the hell of fame and touring, and seeing a world that he thought he knew evolve too fast, alongside being shown love from his partner's family on his birthday in a way he can't quite contextualize or process compared to his own family and his mom's passing, of which he's still very plainly not over. When you pair that with the wheezing saw, the fiddle, and the acoustic guitars, where I'm most reminded of a great Jason Isbell song, another guy who's placed on a pedestal who, given the truths he's put in his music, you probably shouldn't do that, and that's coming from someone who thinks that Jason Isbell made the best album of 2023, the weariness of 28 and the loss you know is coming a couple months down the line just gets to me. If Zach Bryan is still making music into his 30s, and there is absolutely no guarantee of that after this year, it's probably going to be some brutal stuff. I just know it.
So long, London, you find someone.
There's gonna be a lot of people who say that Taylor Swift didn't have as big of a year as she did in terms of the pop zeitgeist. Yeah, the deluxe reissues were corny chart gaming and a more condensed Tortured Poets department with the very best songs from the anthology. It would have been better received. But those tactics only work if folks actually buy the albums. And the one thing the expanded Talk of the Charts lists prove for me is that Taylor Swift ran up the numbers for album cuts this year, and that's great because they were far better than the singles that she wound up pushing. Spoilers, of course she's gonna make this list proper, multiple times maybe, but So Long London is the first song on the album where a lot of the cutesy deflections or overly arched metaphors get thrown aside for something more raw and angry. The coursing, minimalist bass, the echoing vocal snippets, the thrumming tension where Taylor Swift stays predominantly in her richer lower register and delivers one of her best breakup songs to date to her longtime partner Joe Alwyn. When I reviewed Midnights 2 years ago, I highlighted just how much Taylor Swift loved HBO's Succession, and this song feels imported from the frigid rage of that show's nastiest moments, especially between Shiv and Tom. If you know, you know. The history that weighs down every line and how she slowly gives up trying to make it work, that she gave so much time of her life to something that wasn't gonna last, where she kept trying to give more and it wasn't reciprocated in kind, and now in the aftermath, she's furious because a bad enough breakup is gonna taint a place that you came to love. And look, this could never have been a hit on the modern pop charts. I think it's too mature in its venom. You need to have actually had adult relationships in order to grasp its intensity. Someone explained that to Drake. And I'm not gonna say that this is gonna make my list simply because well, I called exactly how it was going to land and end, but God, I wish I was more surprised. If only for her sake. But that takes us to our top 10. Strap in, folks, it's gonna be pretty wild. Number 10. If there's something I'm thoroughly sick of with social media stan culture, it's flop-era discourse. Mostly because it equivocates something not being an overnight, overpowering success in all dimensions with an outright failure. And the cognitive dissonance to keep that up in the face of factual fucking evidence, it's maddening. But then you very quickly realize that said discourse is often propagated by rival stan factions that are looking to pile on, or really anyone who wants an easy target, or anyone grifting off of posting chart statistics in the absence of context for free clicks. And this is where you should really log off Twitter, go to the bathroom, find literally anything else to do. The truth is that a flop is often only really recognized in historical context, that by necessity cannot come immediately. You need months, if not years, to fully recognize and see it. More often than not, you need another album to see the pattern, or hell, at least more than just the first week numbers to see if a sleeper hit might manifest, or acknowledge that the vast majority of pop acts rarely get continuity of success beyond 2 albums. So with all that in mind, here's a song that deserved much better discourse than it got.
I come and I go. Tell me all the ways you need me. I'm not here for long. Catch me or I go Houdini. I come and I go. Prove you got the right to please me. Everybody knows. Catch me or I go Houdini.
Who would have thought that the song title Houdini would have been so popular this year, with 2 dominant hits? Well, this was the far better one, and proven evidence that both Danielle Harle and Kevin Parker of Tame Impala can actually produce a killer pop song, something both of them have kind of struggled with more than you might think in recent memory. And I know a lot of people want to look back on the radical optimism era as a failure because Training Season didn't fully work, and Illusion was just mediocre as all hell, unwilling to acknowledge that the multi-single run Dua Lipa went on during the pandemic with Future Nostalgia was damn near unprecedented in its time. But Houdini was fucking great. Sweet bass line with phenomenal percussion patter around the wells of analog synth, the deep drum rumbles that set up that hook, they sound majestic, a great flashy post-chorus complete with Blondie-esque shouts remind me of Call Me, a killer squonking solo, so many fidgety little pieces that are so well constructed and interlocking, you barely notice the marvel of its construction until you've given it a dozen listens. You know, like the best of magic tricks. And the lyrics are solid too. I like Dua Lipa playing the elusive dance floor vixen who dares someone to keep up with her, or she'll make her Irish goodbye. It helps keep up the dance floor diva coolness and deflection that has always been one of her greatest assets here. Shame it didn't really translate for the rest of 2024, but as one of those radical optimism defenders who thinks it's considerably better than many gave it credit, yeah, you know what? I appreciate the magic. Number 9. Yeah, it's insane that this was as big of a hit as it was, that its trajectory felt so unexpected and long-lasting, where you're inclined to make a comparison to the last time a black man dominated the intersection between country and rap so efficiently on the charts. But for a really rough year for mainstream country, my God, I needed this.
Someone pour me up a double shot of whiskey. They know me and Jack Daniels got a history. There's a party downtown near 5th Street. Everybody at the bar getting tipsy.
It breaks my heart a little that I think the odds are stacked against Shaboozey getting another crossover hit. Yeah, good news is seeing some traction. I'd love for it to get momentum in the new year, but his label situation seems kind of fraught, and not nearly enough people gave proper attention to his really good breakout album this year. I'm still one of very few people who bothered to cover and review it on this platform. Now, I'm not entirely surprised. The interpolation of Jaquan's Tipsy, it would be idiosyncratic nostalgia bait if clipping didn't already do it for the Save Stereo Gum compilation a few years back, and then giving the shaggy country makeover with plentiful fiddles and live instrumentation. It feels like the sort of gimmick that would join like Postmodern Jukebox or any other stylistic change-up channel on YouTube. It would be, again, a gimmick. But if you don't believe Beyonce co-signing this guy is the real deal, I'm here to really back him up as well. Shaboozey's warmth and natural hangdog charisma is immediately immediately likable. His production crew has picked up a lot of refinement over the past couple of albums. He loves that big sing-along hook, and that's a big winner for me. And for what it's worth, he shows more respect in both hip-hop and country than, well, quite frankly, a lot of the biggest players in both genres. He handled the CMAs and his losses there with more grace than many of his peers ever have. A bar song Tipsy might just live out as an exasperated drinking song that winds up a surprising karaoke staple, but it is the best possible version of that. And like with Lil Nas X before him, I really hope he sticks around as a broad net positive for the scene at large. Even if we don't get Let It Burn as that proper single, hey, a man can dream. Number 8. So one thing I find very funny about the Hot 100 and the year-end list is that overall chart positioning has less to do with how much popular buzz circulates around a song than its longevity in various channels. So that when the year-end got released this year and a fair number of stans got incensed that it wasn't Taylor or Charlie or Billy topping the Hot 100, but a white pop soul singer named Teddy Swims with that waltz cadence radio cut that never seemed to go away, that did make me chuckle a little bit, especially as he was another beneficiary of the UMG TikTok feud in order to fill in the gaps in the charts. Now, I still don't really care about Lose Control. It's not bad, it reminds me just way too much of Earned It by The Weeknd to really click for me, so I'm very glad that his follow-up made up that difference.
I said I would die for you, baby, but I can't take this pain no more. I thought I was willing, but tonight I saved my life when I showed you the door.
I'll be blunt, Teddy Swims had an uphill battle to win me over, but in 2024, that was the year where he actually made those strides, mostly by putting in the work for other acts as a guest star in R&B and soul music that didn't chart. A bit of a far cry from his post-hardcore roots where he made his start. If you're showing up on a great Lucky Day album with a standout performance, I'm gonna reconsider how much cred I give you, or even apologize because I was not familiar with your game. Then there was The Door, easily his best single that fixes pretty much everything I didn't like. It ditches the clingy melodrama for a slightly more crisp breakup song. It's literally the through line of that hook, especially as this was the sort of relationship that put him on some pretty big highs, but ultimately turned out to be toxic in the long run. The sort of thing that he has to end for his own damn good. More importantly, it's a reminder that these sorts of soul throwbacks can have some tempo and swagger, perhaps maybe a little too much reverb alongside the coursing bass line as the arranged elements of guitars rise up all on the hook, but Teddy Swims has both the vocal control and the intensity to match it without overpowering the mix. And as someone who actually attempted this at karaoke and rather miserably failed, it's way harder to do than you might think. And while I'm not sure how much consistent traction Teddy Swims will see in the future, Bad Dreams didn't quite take off the way one might hope. If there is a large white dude with face tats and a huge voice I want to stick around, I think Teddy Swims earned that for me. Certainly more than Jelly Roll did. I want to hear more. Number 7. A very fair indictment of mainstream country is that there's just less storytelling than there used to be. Hell, I think that's true about a lot of genres, from rap to rock to metal to even R&B. But nearer to the folk tradition, it's an element of country that I do dearly miss. So it's a very good thing that one of the biggest stars in this genre right now just so happens to have the best deep cut single choices I've seen in recent memory.
And light up those streets that never sleep when the sky goes dark, out where the wild things are.
When I heard Growing Old by Luke Combs in 2023, even beyond the viral success of his cover of Fast Car, I was hoping against hope that as a late album single he would push Where the Wild Things Are, but I'll be honest, I didn't expect it. Even with Luke Combs' success, that would be a daring choice for a single in 2023-2024 as a story song with a shocking sad ending, even as it feels anthemic, even if it was a late single. But in a rare show of Nashville radio actually getting it right, this became a credible hit, and it's one of Luke Combs' best original songs. Telling the story of a brother who takes off on a motorcycle for California, invites Luke Combs out to chase some of that hedonistic crazy dream, theme, and after a wild time, the song takes an abrupt sad turn with a motorcycle accident. And yet the trick of the song is being so breezy, sounding so huge, that such a dark closer doesn't overpower anything. Anchored in that firmer groove and the chiming piano chords, the song feels rooted in an older rock tradition of wild adventure, like something out of the 1980s where the subtle Motley Crue reference that opens up the song can be more earnest than sleazy. That's kind of insane. And in an era where rock is more often found in crossover bro country than anything from that scene, and often the most sleazy and gross side of it at that, I love that Luke Combs is willing to play to that throwback yearning and find both fun and pathos out of it. It's almost enough for me to forgive Nashville for not seriously pushing anything from Luke Combs' excellent neo-traditional album Fathers and Sons from this year, but this ruled. Absolutely deserving of being a hit, even if we probably won't get anything else like it in the near future. Number 6. So we're now in territory that's a bit uncharted for these lists, namely that for the rest of this, the majority will have made or will make my favorite songs of their respective years, and I kind of don't want to repeat myself that much, but at least for one of these next two, I think I might have to, because I said last year Chappell Roan was built to be a star. This year, she proved it.
Why don't you come over? Red wine supernova, falling into me. Let's pick it up now.
I know that Good Luck Babe was the song that introduced the vast majority of folks to Chappell Roan, and Hot to Go was the earworm. Truth be told, I like both songs, I just don't love them. I knew she had better. But when Red Wine Supernova became a credible hit, I nearly jumped for joy. This was the banger that needed to be heard. I adore this song. The rattling, choppy acoustics balanced with that jagged synth thrum, especially with the killer galloping change up on the hook, and that subtle shuffling addition to the percussion that comes in for the final chorus. Then we have Chappell Roan's impeccable balance between the campy, theatrical earnestness and so much horny lesbian energy. The call and response between the backing vocals, again, it's pure magic. And not since B.O.B. teamed up with Rivers Cuomo have we gotten so many goofy magician references in order to stick the landing. And that's in a year where two different acts name-checked Harry Houdini. So yeah, utterly glorious. And if you're looking for a song to properly introduce someone to Chappell Roan, I would point to this over anything else. Number 5. But you know, if you want to be a connoisseur about Chappell Roan,
Knee deep in the passenger seat, and you're eating me out as a casual now. 2 weeks and your mom invites me to her house in Long Beach as a casual now.
okay, Red Wine Supernova, I understood it was going to be the proper hit. It continued the dance-ready momentum, especially alongside Pink Pony Club, which was among the last cut for this list. But Casual was something else. The deep-cut ballad that might have the meme-ready line, knee-deep in your passenger seat and you're eating me out as a casual now. But the fact that Chappell Roan spins out of this moment so much genuine catharsis and pathos, it's miraculous. It could have just been a joke, but it's not. Despite all of her misgivings, Chappell Roan's sticking around for the ride. Sad pun intended this time. And what I love about the song is that emotional complexity. She's trying not to catch feelings for this girl, she's trying to play it cool, but they keep getting enmeshed in each other's lives. And she is putting in all the work, and maybe it's all a huge mistake. Her friends are certainly telling her so just try to get her off, if you even can. And there's a sad tragedy to even looking for that. Thankfully, I'm past it, but last year, the memory of putting in a lot of work for an unequal relationship where you hope for just a little appreciation, it struck one hell of a chord. And amidst those thrumming wells of synth, it still kinda does. If you need convincing that Chappell Roan is more than just a reincarnated fusion of Cyndi Lauper and Pop Kate Bush, a cut like this is all you need. Nothing casual about that. Number 4. Granted, the more you think about Casual, the more you know the breakup's inevitable, and Chappell Roan seems to know that too. It's one of the reasons the song's so desperately sad. And hell, maybe it's the moment that underscores my kink is karma or good luck babe. But on some level, despite those breakup songs hitting really hard, there's an intimacy that's gonna constrain their scope. Some of that just being a factor of production limitations with Dan Nigro. I'm not sure if she was able to make it sound as big as she wanted. Sometimes you need a breakup song or a post-breakup song that hits harder.
So you work your life away just to pay for a timeshare down in Destin, Florida. It's one hell of a drug, Florida. Can I use you?
So this year I got really sick of people saying that everything on the Tortured Poets department sounded the same, or it didn't have dynamics, or wasn't doing anything new for Taylor Swift. Because not only did we have pop albums that felt a lot closer to that description, I don't think Taylor Swift has ever made a song like Florida before. To put it bluntly, it sounds like a Florence and the Machine song, fulfilling all the desperate hopes I've had for nearly 10 years they get something to cross over post What Kind of Man. And to my astonishment, Taylor Swift and Florence Welch have way better chemistry than I ever expected. Because when you think about it, Taylor Swift is rarely sung alongside other women. I went back to check through her catalog and getting Colby Calais early on Fearless, the Chicks on Lover, a little bit of Lana Del Rey on Midnights, a couple occasions on the Taylor's version albums, normally the bonus cuts. If you know, Imogen Heap has backing vocals on Clean from 1989. So a song where she actually meets her match in raw intensity, it feels special. There's real chemistry there. Now I've also heard folks criticize this song by saying that the brittle acoustics and the thrumming bass crescendo doesn't sound like Florida. Right, so it should sound like Denzel Curry or the bad half of Florida Georgia Line. That makes sense. Even if I now kind of want to hear what a Denzel Curry Taylor Swift collab would be. But even then, I would say it captures something very different, though, than Florida's reputation of insane debauchery. More the promise of an idea of Florida as escape that can never live up to those expectations. Where in the aftermath of a breakup, Taylor Swift frames it as a place to go and you almost believe she can escape. It's one hell of a drug, but it's ultimately hollow. And you're left in your own exhausted, hungover anger after riding that monster of a crescendo. And for the longest time, this was my favorite song from the whole Tortured Poets Department project, even as I do think it takes a while to fully get going, but even since. For as often as Florida can feel apocalyptic in its own right, Taylor Swift nails that sense of adrenaline and dread running straight into it. That's what makes this special. Check it out. Number 3. So the frustrating thing with the charts is that they are beholden to the calendar year. It happens. And that means songs released near the beginning or end of a year can get caught between years, they might miss out. Sometimes it's not even that. The song just goes viral as the soundtrack for a challenge at an inopportune time, and you're just hoping it can last out for the holidays, maybe scrape on the list. And that's the benefit of using a bigger list, so I can feature songs like this.
Push the fucking pack off of the porch or break a pound down. Get the scrap if it happen to blow, it makes a round sounds. Pussy cat on my lap, push it back and go to town down. Putting rap on my back and I'm black and snatching crowns.
In a different timeline, this is a hit proper in 2022 when we don't need to rely on the ceiling challenge for this to blow up in late 2023, outlast the holidays, and then barely fall short of the year-end Hot 100 proper. Now granted, also in that proper timeline, Jid has better promotion and career direction than what Dreamville has given him, where instead of being the mutineer to properly end J. Cole after his apology, this year the biggest albums he shows up on are from Eminem and Katy Perry. But I'll take what I can get. This is one of the best songs of 2022, finally getting to be a hit proper, and man, it holds up well. The killer soulful sample blending in between Aretha Franklin and Mos Def, the impeccable switch-offs between Jid, 21 Savage, Baby Tate, and then that hard beat change into something more ominous and pummeling, and then everybody delivering great verses. Jid is playfully menacing in his braggadociousness before and after the beat change, where if this is all ironic, it goes way harder than most playing it straight straight. Baby Tate's quick 4 bars highlight how underrated she can be. And this is the 21 Savage verse that actually gave me some hope for American Dream this year. Talk about an album that got stepped on from pretty much every direction and still had some decent moments. I like Red Rum, but I also know he's got the potential to deliver more like this. But again, surround sound built up a ton of goodwill, and if Jid can follow up the Forever Story, maybe 2025, I think he's got a real shot of getting a proper hit right out of the gate this time. Let's see it happen. Number 2. No mincing words here. 2-horse race between my top hits of 2024. As this year progressed, it really wasn't close. It was between 2 of the biggest artists of the year who just so happened to have an odd kinship near the very top. So much so that it became how part of one of them was dissed this year. The feeling that without the other, he just didn't have that commercial appeal for success. Well, if 2024 was going to prove that wrong in spades and do it with Venom, I don't know how you do it better.
Hater, I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress. I hate the way that you sneak this. If I catch flight, it's gonna be direct. We hate the bitches you fuck, cause they confuse themselves with real women. Then notice I said we, it's not just me, I'm what the culture feeling.
So it should not be a surprise to anyone who's watched me for a while that Not Like Us is not making any of my year-end list. Mostly because I've warmed and cooled to the song multiple times all year. I go back and forth whether I think the production, the tone, and the content fully work in the larger context, and even if it is what the culture's feeling and made for one hell of a party this summer, it's the sort of party that's left me with an uneasy feeling in my gut, and quite frankly, there's other songs from G&X I think I do that sound better. And it's kind of similar for Meet the Grams. It's got some of the best moments of the beef, especially in that final verse, but the third verse hangs a little awkwardly months later. It's not eligible to be among the hits, and while I respect how insanely dark it is, and how often I've gone back to it, it may wind up missing the cut, fair warning. But Euphoria, it was everything I wanted from a Kendrick Lamar diss track. Not only proof that the boogeyman could come out to play, but can throw haymakers while not compromising his artistic refinement and focus. I love the production from Cardo here, from the Teddy Pendergrass flip that opens up the track to the horns that sound across the second passage, to that final beat switch into the hammering metallic segment. It carries so much minor key menace, and it's paired with the first rap song I think I've completely committed to memory in years. The entire beef was chock full of cultural moments for me, but Euphoria was the one that felt righteous and kick ass. Where not only did Kendrick Lamar give us so many quotables and remind us just how funny he is, even with a couple slip-ups in some of these bars, he brought the venom and intensity to inspire us to be a better class of hater. And as someone who knows the truth that just because you can rap does not mean you can engage, discovering that Kendrick Lamar was equipped for war as much as any critic dared to dream was thrilling. I could spend hours breaking down the stacked punchlines and triple entendres and the battle rap tactics, and that's before we get into the street references, which as a Toronto resident, I'm smarter than to put in a script and then on film. But the moment I knew something had really changed was when I went to karaoke. The night after Euphoria dropped, someone got up to do a Drake song, and the DJ started clowning him. He started mentioning Euphoria directly. I was watching the culture move in real time, and that's something we will probably never see again. But in the meantime, if there's a track that belongs in the annals of the best ever diss tracks, Euphoria is the one for me. Very nearly my favorite hit song of 2024. But before we get to what actually got there, this would be where I would highlight how the Canadian charts are always better, and the songs that got real big up here and didn't in the United States that really deserve more attention. And I hate to say that Drake's loss may have been felt by our entire music industry at large, because this was the rare, really bad year for the Canadian Hot 100 for the year end, where I got very few good choices to highlight, so much so that there is gonna be some overlap with what showed up at some point in the US, but I have to fill spots here, okay? I wasn't gonna put crap like that One Republic David Guetta song. So with that,
Make me sweat, make me harder, make me lose my breath, make me water, make me sweat, make me harder, make me lose my breath, make me water.
yes, I know, it was a hit stateside, bigger than in Canada. Technically, it could have made last year's best list, but I ran out of space. But this sort of I'm a Piano cut tends to have more worldwide luck, and that tends to matter more in the Canadian charts anyway. And Tyla deserves a lot more attention for a song that sounds this effortlessly fun and beautifully produced. Make Breathe Me a hit already, goddammit.
I could eat that girl for lunch as she dances on my tongue. Tastes like she might be the one. And I could never get enough. I could buy her so much stuff. It's a craving, not a crush.
Okay, actually bigger in Canada than it was stateside according to year-end position, and still probably my favorite song from Hit Me Hard and Soft for actually having some real pop energy and swagger off those reverb guitars and the great bass line and that quaking outro. This was a great year for lesbian love songs, and this just got the edge over Guess with Charlie XCX for what it's worth.
Nothing in the world belongs to me but my love. Mine, oh mine, oh mine.
Okay, based off the expanded criteria, I could have put it on last year's list, but it was a way bigger hit in Canada than it was in the States, especially this year. I'm counting it. And for what it's worth, this sort of slow burn song took a lot longer to fully grow for me, with Mitski's heartfelt yearning really landing well opposite the gorgeous production. Although, don't chipmunk it though. I think that misses the point.
Get in your car and you'll leave to kiss me. We'll talk for hours and lie on the backseat.
Based off of the expanded criteria, it could have made this year's list proper, but it was an actual proper hit in Canada. It made our year-end list, and Kenya Grace's EP was really damn good too. Didn't see enough folks talking about it. It's kind of funny how basically making a Pink Panther song about the whirling nature of disposable hookups can be so effective in order to capture the kinetic rapture, but also distinct loneliness of the whole scene and experience. Highly recommended, albeit not that whole experience. That can be pretty rough.
The sun don't rise till the summertime. Forget my northern attitude. Oh, I was raised on the line.
Noah Kahan did a lot of work to rehabilitate his reputation with me by basically collaborating with everyone with way more cred and talent than he has. And if that remix with Casey Musgraves of She Calls Me Back had stuck around, it would be taking this spot. Turns out if there's one thing we can cite in Canada as doing much better than the United States, it's giving Hozier another hit and letting him blow Noah Kahan completely off the stage. Alright, and now for our last entry, number 1. It's a funny thing with Noah Kahan last year. When I put Dial Drunk at the top of that list, it represented a turbulence of emotion I was going through that art is often best at encapsulating. A place where I could work through a pretty rough downward spiral and a folk rock banger from two artists that I barely respect. In 2024, I do not have that same turbulence. And thank God for that. It's not fun to live through what I did last year. But that's not saying there weren't huge emotions that I felt. The sort of emotions where to some, they seemed a little bit alarming out of nowhere, and they weren't sure they could stop me. But as a result of those emotions, there were certain actions I took that led to this being one of the best years of my life. And if I was looking for the song, the anthem that captured that heady, overpowering climax, well, there could only be one.
Running with my dress unbuttoned, screaming, but daddy, I love him. I'm having his baby. No, I'm not, but you should see your faces. I'm turning to Florida through the fences. No, I'm not coming to my senses. I know he's crazy, but he's the one.
There's a meme that mentions that every man spends a certain amount of time per day or per week thinking about the Roman Empire. Given how Taylor Swift opens up this song forgetting how the West was won, I kind of imagine she does that too, but that's not the only reason I found some real kinship with her in this song. Even if my circumstance does not mirror a whirlwind romance with Maddie Healy, including a breakup. Thankfully for me, it's way more stable and much hotter than that. I love that this was the moment where Taylor Swift finally confronts the avalanche of production rejection and expectations that are placed upon her by her handlers, her fan base, the media, the public at large, even her parents, and she gives them the double bird. The person who never really rebelled from the status quo that benefited her so long, finally asking the hard questions of whether it was worth not living as a result. Growing up precocious sometimes means not growing up at all. It's why I was fine with all the paranoid rage of Who's Afraid of Little Old Me, despite every cringy line. It was the last song that was cut before this list. It's the feeling of having power and responsibility, and knowing that sometimes you need to claim your agency and throw open the floodgates to the four winds. Damn anyone who would tell you otherwise. Push the parasocial relationships to the brink. I absolutely love the bridge and third verse of the song because it hits that patronizing and frequently hypocritical moral double standards of an audience that would rather tell you what to do and who you are with your power than rather letting you live it. God, if you have a platform at all, those lines felt so cathartic. And when you paired that with the gentle acoustics that build around the dramatic rush of strings across the crescendos, again, the people who say this album all sounds the same are out of their goddamn minds, that knows how to build the restraint to fully explode on the song's second half with one of her best ever hooks, paired with the fact that Taylor Swift was willing to risk it all from the very top of the pyramid, even if we know it never really went there, the fact the maelstrom got so close, you get caught up in that wave. And in the annals of Taylor Swift's love stories, this is less fairy tale, more bodice ripper, wild romance, willing to floor it through the fences, try to hang on for the ride. And you know, if you find yourself that kind of romance, be it one that burns away or one where the fire burns all the hotter with time, it's unlike anything else in this world. This is absolutely one of Taylor Swift's best songs. This is a sort of extended deep cut that will never be a hit because of its length. It's never going to get pushed as a single, but it's stuck around just long enough to make the expanded list, and it's my favorite hit song of 2024. I can't see your faces, and y'all should know this ain't chaos coming from me, but it is the one I want. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. Again, I'm curious what all of y'all lists are. This was a bit of a wild ride for here, but again, I'm really happy with how it all came together. If you all want to see more lists coming up ahead, or maybe even potentially get an early view on upcoming list, link to my Patreon, link to my YouTube memberships is right over there. And you can also argue with me on my Discord. That's fun too. Please don't feel obligated. Tough times, I understand, but the option's available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.